Ever wondered how milk can stay fresh for months without a single watt of electricity? In this video, we'll uncover how the Amish use time-honored techniques, some tracing back to ancient Egypt, to keep dairy products perfectly preserved. Prepare to be amazed by simple yet genius methods that defy our modern obsession with refrigeration. Number 1. Shared problem. Heat without electricity. Amish communities deal with scorching summers, often hitting 95 degrees Fahrenheit, much like ancient Egyptians who faced 100 degrees Fahrenheit desert conditions. Both groups needed solutions that didn't rely on modern refrigeration. While Egyptians found ways to keep food viable through brutal heat and annual floods, the Amish face humidity, changing seasons, and large family demands. Yet they too prove you can maintain fresh dairy for months on end simply by harnessing nature's own cooling methods, fermentation, and airtight storage. Number 2. Spring houses as natural cooling stations. A key to keeping Amish milk fresh without a fridge is the spring house. Built directly over cold running water, these small structures capture the chill of the stream, lowering temperatures around stored milk cans. Placing containers into flowing water naturally slows bacterial growth. Egyptians didn't have lush streams, but they used thick-walled buildings and underground areas for the same principle: stable temperatures and humidity levels that thwart spoilage. Amish spring houses function like microclimates, preserving milk for weeks or more, especially if the containers are frequently rinsed and kept sealed. Number 3. Timeless fermentation techniques. Egyptians relied on fermentation for grains, transforming barley into a drinkable, long-lasting brew. Amish families use comparable ideas for dairy, turning fresh milk into yogurt, kefir, or clabbered milk. By introducing beneficial bacteria, the Amish convert perishable raw milk into more stable fermented products. These good microbes dominate any harmful bacteria, keeping the milk from spoiling quickly. Think of it as a low-tech yet highly effective method. While Egyptians stored fermented grain beverages in clay pots, modern Amish households might keep dairy ferments in ceramic crocks or glass jars, always sealed to maintain beneficial fermentation conditions. Number 4. Butter and soft cheeses for quick use. Rather than leaving milk to sit for days, many Amish families churn fresh milk into butter, which can last several weeks or more if it's kept in cool spaces like a spring house. Butter forms when milk fats separate, reducing the leftover liquid, buttermilk, which is also used but sours more quickly. Similarly, simple fresh cheeses, like cottage cheese, get consumed relatively fast, but still outlast raw milk by a notable margin. Egyptians, for their part, favored simpler dairy forms when immediate consumption was the goal, often storing them in clay containers to ward off extreme heat. Number 5. Hard cheeses that last for years. One of the Amish community's best-kept secrets is their expertise in cheese making. They can craft hard cheeses that last for many months, even several years, without the crutch of modern refrigeration. Proper salting, controlled aging, and a thick wax coating work together to exclude air and harmful microbes. Egyptians similarly sealed certain foods with wax, resins, and oils, creating air-free zones. For the Amish, an aged wheel of cheddar, once wax-sealed and placed in a cool cellar, might remain safe to eat for up to 25 years. This longevity mirrors how Egyptians used resin-sealed jars to keep grains or fruits edible across entire seasons. Number 6. Root cellars as Earth's refrigerator. Egyptians had underground storage systems called shuna, meticulously organized to combat the desert's intense heat. Amish families replicate that concept with root cellars. Located below the frost line, these cellars stay naturally cool all year. While primarily used for root vegetables, many Amish also store dairy products like cheese or butter in clay crocks or sealed jars down there, achieving a steady temperature that slows spoilage. Since humidity matters, the Amish monitor conditions closely. Too damp and mold forms, too dry and cheese hardens beyond edibility. Much like Egyptian engineers, Amish builders incorporate ventilation shafts to maintain just the right balance. Number 7. Dehydrating some milk products. Although not as prevalent as other methods, a few Amish communities will dehydrate or low-heat dry certain milk-based foods. Think powdered milk or dried cheese curds. Egyptians took advantage of the Sahara's intense sunlight to dry fish and fruit, requiring no electricity, just patience and an eye on the temperature. The Amish, working with variable weather, sometimes rely on solar dehydrators, small greenhouse-like structures that capture heat while allowing moisture to escape. Done correctly, drying extends shelf life dramatically. Once sealed in airtight containers, dried dairy products can last many months if protected from moisture and pests. Number 8. Harnessing honey's preservative magic. Archaeologists found 3,000-year-old honey in Egyptian tombs, still chemically edible. Although honey-preserved dairy isn't as common, the Amish frequently rely on honey's microbial fighting powers for other foods. Honey's low moisture content and high sugar level make it hostile to bacteria. In a pinch, Amish cooks might sweeten their dairy ferments or store tangy cheese alongside honey to discourage spoilage. While not identical to the Egyptian practice of dipping bread or meats in honey, the core principle stands: using a natural preservative that requires zero electricity. If honey can maintain edibility in a desert tomb, it certainly can help extend the life of certain off-grid foods in Amish kitchens. Number 9. Vinegar and clabbered milk. Egyptians discovered how sour wine turned to vinegar could keep vegetables and other perishables usable longer. Amish families similarly use apple cider vinegar for pickling produce, but also for lightly acidifying milk. By mixing in a little vinegar, they can clabber fresh milk, encouraging beneficial souring that sets the stage for cheese or other stable dairy forms. This approach halts bacterial overgrowth and imparts a tangy flavor reminiscent of buttermilk. While it might not last as long as hard cheese, clabbered milk can stay consumable in cool conditions for a surprising amount of time, enough for a large family to finish the batch before it's wasted. Number 10. Oil as an airtight barrier. Although the Amish mostly reserve oil preservation for herbs or certain vegetables, a few communities experiment with oil-based cheese storage, a nod to the Egyptians' practice of submerging foods in olive oil. By keeping cheese fully submerged in oil inside a sealed container, oxygen can't reach the dairy. This drastically slows spoilage. The main challenge is ensuring no part of the cheese surfaces, which could invite mold. Oils themselves generally last 2 to 3 years under ideal conditions, so the Amish watch for any off smells or texture changes. While not the most common approach, it's another creative option that reuses ancient wisdom for modern off-grid living. Number 11. Daily milking and rotation. Egyptians labeled and stacked containers in an orderly fashion, always using the oldest first. The Amish embrace the same principle when it comes to milk. Fresh milk is harvested each day, but older batches get processed or used up before tapping into the new. If a particular container is inching close to spoilage, it's churned, clabbered, or turned into cheese. This rotation system keeps waste to a minimum and ensures there's always a supply of safe, fresh-tasting dairy. In essence, an organized inventory management method acts as the silent hero behind the Amish's consistent milk freshness, just as it did for the Egyptians with their jars of grain and fish. Number 12. String and weight hygrometers. Monitoring humidity is essential in root cellars, spring houses, and aging rooms. Although Egyptians had the dryness of the desert on their side, they still faced flooding seasons along the Nile. The Amish, meanwhile, grapple with Pennsylvania's humid summers. Simple but effective tools like string and weight hygrometers, passed down through generations, help them measure moisture levels in the air. If humidity climbs too high, they add ventilation or reduce water sources in the cellar. This old-school approach, much like the Egyptians' careful arrangement of clay pots, allows them to fine-tune conditions so that milk-based products endure for months without modern climate control. Number 13, 2 cultures, 1 goal, microbial control. The real secret to storing milk long-term without refrigeration lies in understanding microbes. Egyptians didn't have microscopes, but they noticed that certain conditions, cool temperatures, sealed containers, salt, or acid, kept food from rotting. Amish farmers apply identical principles. By controlling temperature with spring houses or cellars and limiting oxygen via wax, oil, or airtight containers, they minimize bacterial growth. Fermentation flips the script from harmful bacteria to helpful ones. Both Egyptians and the Amish learned to harness the right microbes to make milk safe longer. Egyptians in fish sauces, the Amish in buttermilk or cheese cultures. Number 14, milk handling from cow to container. Cleanliness matters. The Egyptians washed or dried containers thoroughly, sometimes smoking them for extra sterilization. Amish milking practices today likewise emphasize rigorous hygiene. Before milking, cows are brushed and cleaned. Equipment is washed and dried to reduce contamination. The fresher and cleaner the raw milk, the longer it can last without spoiling. Once the milk is collected, it's strained and promptly placed in a cooled setting, like a spring house or an ice-cooled trough. Within hours, the Amish often begin a process, churning, fermenting, or storing, that extends the milk's life. This immediate attention parallels how Egyptians quickly preserve their foods, knowing delays invite bacteria. Number 15, layering techniques for extended shelf life. Combining methods is common among Amish families who want milk-based products to last as long as possible. For instance, they might ferment cheese first, then wax coat it, and store it in a root cellar. Or they may partially dehydrate cheese curds, then submerge them in oil for extra insurance. The Egyptians did something similar by salting, drying, and sealing fish in clay vessels, guaranteeing a multi-layer shield against microbial invasion. This comprehensive approach means that even if one barrier falters, like if wax cracks or humidity spikes, other layers keep spoilage at bay, ensuring that a big family won't lose a season's worth of milk. Number 16, the role of temperature swings. Big temperature swings cause condensation and speed up spoilage, something Egyptians and Amish both realized. In the desert, intense daytime heat gave way to cooler nights, prompting Egyptians to design granaries with thick, heat-stable walls. Amish communities do the same with basements, cellars, and heavily insulated spring houses. By preventing sudden shifts in temperature, they protect milk from frequent expansions and contractions that let in moisture or air. Achieving stable temperature is easier underground. So many Amish dairies incorporate partial sub-basements specifically for cheese aging, much like ancient Egyptian food storage chambers that balance daytime heat with cool nighttime air. Number 17, apple cider vinegar as a companion. Though primarily a preservation method for vegetables, vinegar also aids in controlling dairy spoilage. A dash of apple cider vinegar can acidify milk, helping beneficial bacterial strains flourish. Over centuries, the Amish found that certain foods store better if they're slightly more acidic, aligning with the Egyptian idea that souring or pickling extends shelf life. The same principle is behind lactic acid fermentation in cheese or yogurt. By lowering pH, they curb pathogenic microbes, giving dairy a better chance of lasting through muggy summers or cold winters. Number 18. Strategic handling of whey. After cheese making, there's leftover whey. Egyptians used every part of their harvest, never wasting valuable nutrients. Amish families, similarly thrifty, often feed whey to livestock or incorporate it into baked goods, ensuring minimal waste. This synergy between cheese making and farm operations helps keep the entire homestead efficient. Instead of rotting in the heat, whey becomes an asset that fortifies animals or enriches bread dough. The closed-loop approach also reduces odors and contamination. Clean premises mean healthier milk production the next day. Number 19. Cultural traditions and knowledge transfer. Much like Egyptians recorded procedures on papyrus, the Amish passed down dairy preservation knowledge through family lines. It's not unusual to see 3 or 4 generations in one kitchen, each perfecting butter churning or cheese waxing. These shared kitchen secrets refine centuries-old techniques, ensuring they stay vibrant. An Amish grandmother may teach her granddaughter precisely when to add salt during yogurt fermentation, or how thick a cheese's wax layer should be. Oral tradition and hands-on demonstration keep these methods alive, echoing how ancient Egyptians likely taught younger scribes and workers the intricacies of storing food in clay vessels. Number 20. Common sense checking, no digital gadgets. Egyptians sniffed, tasted, and examined their jars, knowing their senses were an early detection system. The Amish do the same. Before using stored milk or cheese, they'll check its smell, color, and texture. No fancy digital thermometers, just an experienced eye and nose. If there's any suspicion, they err on the side of caution. This vigilant approach prevents widespread spoilage, as a single compromised container is isolated and discarded. It's exactly how Egyptians would have spotted issues early in a granary or clay vessel, by trusting their senses and intercepting spoilage before it spread. Number 21. Balancing modern tweaks with old methods. While the Amish avoid mainstream technology, they don't ignore practical inventions like stainless steel milking pails or safer sealing materials for jars. Similarly, Egyptians adopted new ideas over time, shifting from simple clay to more elaborate glazing or resin sealing. The Amish might refine an old approach with better canning lids, but the fundamental principle remains. Keep the food cool, sealed, and properly fermented, and it can last without electricity. The combination of timeless wisdom and minor modern tweaks ensures that even in a technologically advanced era, centuries-old methods still work wonders for preserving milk. Number 22. How long does it really last? With the right combination of techniques, clean milking, quick cooling, fermentation, waxing, and a stable cellar, Amish cheese can hold up for 2 decades or more. Butter might last several months if regularly kept cold in a spring house. Yogurt and clabbered milk fare well for days to weeks. Even raw milk itself, placed in an ice box or near a cold spring, can stretch its freshness to a week or longer. Egyptians were known for storing certain foods for entire seasons. It's the same principle for Amish dairy, though they typically rotate stocks faster. The end result is a continuously available dairy supply, even if the power grid goes out. Number 23. Overcoming seasonal challenges. In winter, many Amish communities harvest blocks of ice from ponds, storing them in ice houses insulated with sawdust. This pairs seamlessly with methods like cheese making to ensure a cold environment for extended intervals. Egyptians contended with Nile floods, sometimes forcing them to store months of provisions, including dairy items in sealed jars or clay pots. Both cultures developed robust strategies to buffer against environmental extremes, showing that you don't need complicated machinery if you learn to partner with nature's cycles. Number 24. Lessons from the Pharaohs to Pennsylvania. Despite the gap of thousands of years, the Amish approach to fresh milk preservation shares striking parallels with ancient Egyptian wisdom. Fermentation, underground storage, honey sealing, careful container preparation, these are all tested solutions that solve a common problem: how to keep milk safe when there's no easy cooling system. By monitoring temperature, moisture, and microbial activity, the Amish ensure that the milk from their morning milking can remain fresh far beyond what most people assume is possible without a refrigerator. Number 25. Timeless simplicity in a modern world. Ultimately, how Amish keep milk fresh for months is about understanding a few core principles: cleanliness, consistent temperatures, minimal oxygen exposure, and supportive microbial environments. In ancient Egypt, similar steps protected food in sweltering desert climates. Today, with growing interest in off-grid living and sustainable practices, these old methods prove that electricity isn't the only path to safe dairy. Whether in the blazing sun of the Sahara or a humid Amish farm, the marriage of common sense, patience, and low-tech ingenuity shows that sometimes going back to basics is the best way forward.